Take 3 daily podcast here. Emergency podcast coming to you on a Saturday morning. I'm actually recording this. I'm going to do it quicker here because I have to go to work. I have to make some money for the family. But I just want to touch one thing here because there's a lot going on. This is a big weekend, sometime weekend, of course, and we might do another daily podcast between now and Sunday because we have to take over tomorrow, too, on top of that also, too. But I had to get on here real quick solo because I needed to get this on my chest. Last night, the return of one CM Punk, AEW Rampage, the worst kept secret in the last month or so. We've been hearing rumors about him being back after 7 years, leaving the WWE, coming to AEW. But of course, nothing was ever set in stone, and I was excited about last night because last night, of course, he had SmackDown, the go home show on SmackDown last night, and then you have, of course, AEW Rampage, the first dance, and it's in Chicago, which is also where CM Punk is from. So kind of all the stars aligned and it made sense and all that. But what I wasn't prepared for was the reaction, the pop. Like we figured, okay, well maybe they'll tease this thing all night long, and then at some point you'll see him, and that's it. I love that AEW from the word go, 10 p.m. Eastern time, just rip the band-aid off, saying let's go. Let's just get the cat out of the bag now. There's no point holding up. What I wasn't prepared for was the pop. The pop was insane. In fact, I'm going to play you the first minute of the pop between them chanting for CM Punk and then him coming out to the music of Living Color Personality. Insane. Listen to this pop. I gotta be honest. Listen to this. First I watched it. Obviously live, but I also put on headphones because my wife at the time was actually on the phone with someone. So I ended up putting on the headphones, and I listening to it on headphones was even 10 times more amazing and louder. You hear the wave when the music pops up. Of course, first the chanting of CM Punk, then you have the music, the theme music coming out, and then you have another wave of the crowd going up a decibel when you see the reveal. You see CM Punk come out of the from backstage. And it's funny because for me, okay, so CM Punk, I believe, started in WWE in 2005, 2006, I believe, somewhere in there. And he left in 2014. Now, as you guys know, some guys that don't know this, I'll remind folks here, I was not watching pro wrestling at this point. Because you guys know, I took a 17-year hiatus, 2002, 2019. So CM Punk, for me personally, doesn't really hit anything for me in the same way because I did not really experience him in real time. Now, that being said, CM Punk was, I would still keep a little one eye open on pro wrestling in those 17 years. Just see what's going on. I mean, obviously you know about John Cena and Edge and, of course, all the big names, and I hear about CM Punk. All I knew is that when I go on Twitter, even those days when I wasn't watching wrestling, CM Punk was always trending, was always being a topic, always being talked about throughout, where he's trending on Twitter or he's just being talked about, people, friends of mine or family members who watch wrestling and just bring him up randomly. So I knew who CM Punk was, and I knew that he was definitely making an impact. When I got the network 2014, he was spread over the network too as well. So CM Punk was not necessarily silent in my life in that time, even though I wasn't watching the product. So I knew who he was, and I was, obviously. But it didn't hit the same nerve because I didn't experience it in real time. It wasn't until I got back into wrestling in 2019 that I really started to go back and watch the impact. Watching the Money in the Bank match against John Cena in Chicago also too, where he got that major pop also, which, by the way, I'm going to be doing hopefully, definitely on my podcast, or podcast, but probably on Take 3 as well too at some point. doing a topic saying, revealing the top 5 biggest pops in the history of the business. Last night's pop, for me personally, and I'm trying not, no, let me rephrase that. I'm not even trying. I'm telling you, I am not being prisoner of the moment right now. Last night's pop, considering the circumstance, considering the sustainability and all that, was the biggest pop I have ever heard, considering everything. Considering the emotions and stuff. I mean, you had grown men crying in the crowd. There were some men crying in the crowd. I mean, and again, it's perfect because it was in Chicago, where this is his hometown. So, and of course, there's a lot of opinions about CM Punk and what can he do for AEW? Could he help AEW? His speech, obviously, threw some jabs at WWE, of course, not mentioning them because he can't really do that. But, there's a lot of people I'm talking to, like there's a couple of friends of mine who just recently stopped watching the product, who now, because CM Punk is back, are actually considering coming back to the product now, watching the product again, or watching pro wrestling as a whole again. So CM Punk, in some cases, and I went over this on the Big Show on Thursday, that we were talking about Roman Reigns' comments about comparing CM Punk to say The Rock and John Cena, and whether or not CM Punk is a needle mover. Well, CM Punk is a needle mover to some degree. He may not be a needle mover in the same way outwardly, like in mainstream Hollywood, but John Cena and The Rock are mainstream stars. Within the wrestling parlance, though, and I think last night kind of confirmed this, is that CM Punk, at least right now for the short term, and we'll see how what goes long term, at least right now, CM Punk is a needle mover. Last night's reaction all over Twitter and social media, and I guess, and I think me also, like, again, I was never invested in CM Punk because I wasn't watching the product, but the fact that I was actually excited about last night, I bought my wife $50 sushi last night so we could enjoy wrestling last night. I don't watch SmackDown Live normally anyway, so I was already jacked up last night to watch wrestling as a whole. And mainly because of the CM Punk reveal, which we got, which Tony Khan did deliver on. So, I've watched that clip. I posted on my social medias platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I've watched that intro of CM Punk coming out to the ring, down the ramp, like probably 100 times already now in the last 12 hours. I mean, it was incredible. I got goosebumps watching that thing. I got goosebumps, and I don't know. Like I said, we're gonna in the weeks to come, days to come, whatever. We're gonna debate about what kind of impact he'll have on the company. What could he do? Cause we still don't know how good he's in the ring. He hasn't wrestled in 7 years, so that's still another major hurdle we're gonna, as fans, have to get over. But in terms of his presence in the company, in terms of his presence being back in a pro wrestling environment, I think he proved last night that he still does move the needle. He still has a pulse, and fans do care. And again, when you have friends of mine, and people I'm talking to, like who haven't watched the product in a couple of years, and they're coming back to the fold because of what happened last night, I think it's a little bit of proof that CM Punk does move the needle to some degree. Again, we'll debate in the coming weeks about the impact and what he can and can't do for the company. And you still have that Daniel Bryan, or Bryan Danielson, what it be called, who's rumored to come to the company as well too, probably in September. Dave Meltzer put a report last night that there's supposed to be another significant person that may also be coming to the company soon too. Speculate as Bray Wyatt / Wyndham and Tunda. So there's a lot of things going on right now. And I'll tell you, last night confirmed this to me. Man, it is fun being a wrestling fan. We get made fun of because pro wrestling is fake sport and scripted. Okay, whatever. That's you. You don't like that's fine. But last night was one of those moments. It reminded me why I love watching pro wrestling. It reminded me like moments. And by the way, for the record, speaking of moments, before I go, I got to head to work. Last week's Rampage debut. You had Chris Jericho and Excalibur, Mark Henry, and Taz. They brought in Jim Ross in place of Chris Jericho. Don't know why. But whatever reason they did that, it was smart. Jim Ross may not be the same guy he was even 10 years ago. Certainly not 20 years ago. But Jim Ross still to this day, even in AEW, is still a moment maker. His voice still resonates to multiple generations of fans, pro wrestling fans. And having Jim Ross there for the reveal was perfect. It set the tone. It set Jim Ross is the standard of how we judge pro wrestling commentators. He is arguably the greatest of all time. So having him there, as opposed to Chris Jericho, who I've been critical earlier last week because he's too loud and boisterous and too much, you needed someone that can create the moment, and Jim Ross was there to create the moment. And now in the years to come, when AEW continues to exist, hopefully in the years to come, decades to come, you'll have this. So anyway, that's just my quick thoughts on CM Punk. Anyway, enjoy SummerSlam weekend. Hopefully, have another podcast daily from the boys, Mike and Joe, previewing NXT Takeover. So we'll see what happens. Otherwise, love you guys. Enjoy the podcast. Enjoy SummerSlam, and we'll talk to you later.